Welcome back to Brick Gaming YG. I'm back here with another video today, and today I'm going back and covering the topic of Altergeist. But before I get into this, please like, comment, and subscribe. And also shout out to some of my subscribers who have been suggesting me going back and redoing like some of my Altergeist stuff or discussing it more, considering that I haven't talked about it in a couple of months, or at least more than a month I haven't talked about Altergeist, and you know, it's time for the update. So I'm going to be going over how you play this deck in the current format, matchups, as well as just some basic knowledge. So I'm just going to get right into this. I'm going to start with the basic knowledge for Altergeist before you should even like pick up the deck. Just some basics that you should know. Number one, Altergeist is obviously more of a stun deck, or a control deck to be exact, compared to like a combo deck or any of the other decks that might be more popular currently. Number two, Altergeist has really good matchups against other control decks. Combo decks also has a really good matchup if it's going first. And finally, the deck can play a very large hand trap ratio if you want. I would recommend 8 hand traps total. 3 of those should be impermanents. Another 2 should be a Veiler or another card like is relevant, such as Ghost Ogre or something along those lines during each format. And then finally 3 Ash I feel like is just really standard in the deck. Then moving on from there, also there's a lot of really cool, really niche interactions with other decks and also within its own deck. So the first one I really want to show off is of course the one that I always bring up. If you brick and open Silkadust plus Manifestation, you are perfectly fine. Number one, you probably have other traps. In that case, you usually do have more traps. So what you're going to do is normal summon Silkadust, set your back row, right? All your back row is set. Your opponent doesn't know what you have, and you're just sitting there with a Silk. So it doesn't really seem that great to your opponent most of the time. But it's actually just fine. The first thing you're going to do is let your Silk get destroyed or sent to the graveyard in one way or another. That's perfectly fine. But what's important here is that after a Silk is gone, you're going to activate Manifestation. As long as your opponent doesn't have a bunch of negates, you're going to go with Manifestation, bring back Silk, and then for the rest of the game, until you start seeing more Altergeist cards, you can do the constant interaction every single turn of using Silk to bounce back Manifestation, bounce a card your opponent controls, then it'll hit Grave, then during the next turn, during your turn you can set, reactivate it, summon it back, bounce something your opponent controls, it hits Grave, and you can keep on doing that same loop over and over again. Now if your opponent destroys Silk without you bouncing him back, well, Manifestation and Silk will hit Grave, but the great thing is that Silk in Grave bounces back a trap, so you're going to get this back to hand again and be able to reactivate it. So no matter what, you're going to always have a Silk available in that certain scenario. Next is if you have a monster on field. Let's say you have summoned down Marionetter and you already have a face-up personal spoofing your opponent, like imperms you, Veilers you, whatever card it is, to get rid of Marionetter or negate it. You can always chain personal spoofing to that activation, shuffling back in your Marionetter or another card on field that you know, basically is on your side of the field that you can always shuffle back. This does not prevent your opponent from ashing you though. So let's say you have Multi-Figure in hand, you resolve it off of the activation of a trap. You summon him down, you activate his effect. Now, if your opponent is going to ash the effect to summon, if you chain personal spoofing, the ash still goes through and you're not able to get the summon. And that's a kind of small rule. A lot of people think that, oh, because you shuffle back into your deck, it dodges everything. No, it does not. That's the one weakness you could say of the deck. Number two, Nibiru, of course, doesn't do anything against this deck. So never ever worrying about summoning too much or worrying about Nibiru. And that usually just makes it so your opponent has to side out more cards or avoid siding in, which is super nice. But you can also get up to a lot of summons in this deck potentially. And even though this deck isn't a combo deck, you can still get over 5 summons in some specific scenarios. Next, for the next combo or kind of cute interaction I want to talk about, is having either a Almirage or a Meluseek on the field plus one other card. Let's just say Conqueror, right? Yeah, something like either these two or just any one other monster on field. Let's say you have these two, for example. Well, then you're able to go into Hita with those two. Then from Hita, you're able to then you're able to basically, once Hita hits the board, as long as you still have like one more monster, doesn't really matter what, you just need a spellcaster in Grave at this point. You're going to basically just have another monster in one way or another, and then from there you'll be able to link up into Selene. Now this is an OTK combo, so the deck already has a hard time OTKing, but basically you just want to have 2 monsters, at least one that fits into that, plus one other monster you have access to either normal or special summon, which isn't too difficult. But then you're going to summon out Celine. Then if there's at least 3 spells in either player's graveyard, you can then reborn one of your spellcasters. Preferably, most of the time you really want it to be Meluseek, but sometimes it's other ones. But let's say you reborn Meluseek in this case, or reborn Conqueror to be exact. Reborning, since I used it in this example, reborn Conqueror, then you're able to link 4, go into access code with 5300 attack, and usually you're able to chip away at your opponent's life points a little bit before this, blow up whatever cards are in the way, and then go for game. Now, another example is with Area. Now, let's say you have a Meluseek plus 1 other monster on field, or a trap, or whatever. Just something, a way to get to, like, another monster. So, you're going to link these 2 off into Area. You're going to then use Meluseek to get a search. Let's just say you search out a Multi-Faker or a normal summon. You're able to then normal summon or special summon Multi-Faker off of a trap. So, then you're able to get him on field. Link 3 again. Go back into your Celine. Resolve it with 3 spells engraved, and then basically make access code again. And you can get multiple searches off of Meluseek this way, so it adds more to your resources if your opponent has something to prevent the OTK, which most times by the time you get to that point, your opponent doesn't have anything to prevent the OTK. Now, the next thing I want to talk about also is that a lot of people always seem to forget this while I'm playing this deck, either like playing against them or in testing, anything like that, and that's Conqueror. Conqueror is not once per turn to summon itself down, and on top of that, the negate is also not once per turn. So let's say you have a Silk or a Manifestation with it. So let's say you have a Silk, your opponent's declaring into Silk, use Conqueror. Then if your opponent's still in battle phase, you can then use Silk to bounce back Conqueror plus any monster they control, or any card they control, and then when their other monsters declares, you can summon down Conqueror and then negate another card. Or let's say, once again, Silk, and you have a face down Manifestation, or where you get back out Conqueror, you summon down Conqueror to prevent attack. Let's say they kill Conqueror, Conqueror would hit grave, then you could use Manifestation to reborn back Conqueror, and yeah, basically it just becomes a shield for the deck, and it's very nice in most of those scenarios. Now I want to talk about matchups to this format. First off, the matchup of this deck versus Dogma. Now, Dogma is one of the most represented decks, at least at my local level, and I see a lot of people trying to play it, trying to do a lot of cool stuff with it, and Dogma for this deck isn't really that big of a deal in a lot of ways. I think the deck has one of the best matchups against Dogma. Number one, this deck doesn't need to go into the extra deck. Going to the extra deck is optional in this deck. It's not something that's required, so you can just play the main deck game against them and slowly use up all of their resources. Because this deck is so much more has so many more resources than Dogma, and the deck can go on for way more turns against that deck. Now, Dogma Invoke, there might be a little bit more of a struggle, but usually you can stop the Invoker activation pretty easily in this deck. Normally, it does not resolve, just because of the resources at hand for this deck, which is super nice. Then, finally, for the Dogma matchup, this deck, I think the only thing that you ever have to worry about is punishment, but cards such as Silk, Personal Spoofing, and other cards can easily get around that and easily deal with that issue. Then I want to also kind of just quickly mention, of course, the deck that's pretty popular right now, Dragon Link. Now, a lot of people have really shown off a lot of cool Dragon Link combos. I've been watching those videos. A lot of really cool stuff you can do with it, a lot of combos. It's just completely nuts. So, how does Altergeist do against Dragon Link? If you go first, I think this deck can definitely beat Dragon Link. But that's a if. If you go second with this deck and you don't open up more than 2 negations or 2 preventative plays on your opponent's turn, literally, it's not fun at all. Because this deck, kind of problem is that it's bad at breaking boards in a lot of cases, and usually you need cards like Evenly Matched or Dark Aurora No More. And sure, that's nice when you see them, but you don't see them every single time. So if you're going second against that type of deck, it can be definitely a really big uphill struggle. Now, going first, as I mentioned, usually you can get pretty easily, and it's not really a big deal. Then I also want to talk about some other decks that are around right now. Eldritch. This deck has literally no issues against Eldritch. I feel like Altergeist in a lot of ways is a more consistent version of Eldritch. I know that some people might disagree, but talking with people, these decks are both like very mid mid-level. Like, it's not a bunch of insane, like, negate boards, but it's also not a lot of, like, really just, like, no interactions whatsoever. But comparing these two decks, I think it comes down to consistency and what you're able to do off of, like, brick hands or really amazing hands. And in my opinion, off of a really amazing hand, I think, sure, Eldritch might be able to do a little bit more, but a lot of times you're getting average hands. And if you get average hands, this deck can do way more. It's way more playable with an average hand. With an average hand for Eldritch, it's like maybe 1 or 2 interactions and that it. Maybe like a hand trap negate on top of that, but not enough. This deck, on an average hand, is like 3 back row plus maybe like 2 Altergeist monsters, or opening up like Marionetter plus some Altergeist traps and like some other random traps. That's still better than like an average Eldritch hand if you know how to play out Altergeist hands. Then also even with the new support from for Eldritch in its deck, where it's able to get the next continuous spell, I still feel like that isn't really game breaking, and it's not a card you really want to play at more than like 1 or 2 in the deck, at least in my opinion, and it's only really good in the pure build. And I think pure Altergeist versus pure Eldritch, pure Altergeist wins every single time. Also, I guess the only other really relevant decks to bring up would be Adamantipeers. And the deck used to have kind of a hard time against Adamantipeers. It's like the same logic as Dragon Link, but now Adamantipeers are pretty much gone from the meta. It's not even a big deal anymore. Also bringing up Shaddolls. Shaddolls have never been a big deal for this deck. Winda does not matter against this deck in 90% or more of the scenarios you might run into. I guess Zombies might also be good to bring up. Zombies can be, I guess, interesting. It's just really interesting. It doesn't do anything against this deck though. And then finally, Thunder Dragons. How does this deck compare to Thunder Dragons? Now, I love both Thunder Dragons and Altergeist, and both decks are really, really fun to play. But if I were to compare them, I think that it is a tough one, because I really like both decks, but if you just take out any bias in a standard just 1v1 game, Altergeist should easily win. That's what usually happens. Altergeist can go for a longer time. It has better stun and control games than Thunder Dragons. It's able to do a lot more, especially with the players good. If you're good with Altergeist, Thunder Dragons are never an issue. But not everyone plays Denkoseka in Thunder Dragons, so that also is like really just a blowout card against this deck. But since most people don't play it, it never comes up. But if it does come up, you have plenty of ways to deal with it. Silkadus is one of the biggest ones. Just once you have another monster, you're able to resolve Multi-Faker beforehand. Also, Melisika is just a 1 card out to it. And I think also in the matchup, unless the Thunder Dragon player goes first, it's just going to be really hard for Thunder to beat this deck. The Thunder Dragon player has to go first, has to like play through maybe 1 or 2 negates, which usually isn't a big deal. Usually you're able to play through 2 negates with Thunder Dragon's first turn. But if you brick, you're not winning. If your opponent has too many negates, you're not winning. It's just a really tough matchup for the deck. And then also, Multi-Faker plus Imperm first turn against Thunder Dragons. That's just GG a lot of the times. It just really hurts, because that can really, if the player playing Altergeist knows what they're doing, it can just completely stun the Thunder Dragon player out of the game. So, but I feel like overall, Altergeist has a lot of really good matchups this format. It just, a lot of it comes down to dice roll against a lot of the meta decks, unless you're like really, really good in that matchup. I think the biggest decks that this deck has a hard time with is definitely Dragon Link is up there. I mean, Eldritch, not really. Like, if you don't know what you're doing against Eldritch, it can be a little bit difficult. Thunder Dragons, if they open broken all 2 or 3 games, that can be a struggle. But for the most part, Altergeist are really still a strong deck and can put in a lot of work this format. I will be updating this deck as formats go on and kind of giving my thoughts. But for the most part, if you know what you're doing with Altergeist, there shouldn't really be any big issues. If there's a deck, oh wait, I just realized I missed the deck. I forgot about Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, to be honest, they have a horrible time with Altergeist. I think that's actually like one of the few matchups where if you go up against Dinosaurs, you don't even have to really worry. because the only card you have to worry about is Misk, but there's so many ways that you can get around Misk, and they go first and do one of their insane boros, like where they walk you out of the extra deck, or walks you out of special something. There's still a lot of ways you can play around that and still win the duel, so it's not really too big of a deal. But overall, those are my thoughts on Altergeist. If you guys have any suggestions or anything I missed in this video, please let me know in the comments down below. I hope you guys all enjoyed it though, and of course, once again, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys all in the next video.